Welcome to today's podcast with Joe Whitbread. Joe is the agency manager at JSM Social Media, and he is here today to talk to us about finding those hidden opportunities, specifically with your side hustle. Now, as inflation creeps up, it becomes more and more important to bankroll that cash flow and get some extra dollars in your pocket. And Joe is here to explore this topic with us and find unique ways to broaden that side hustle and see more cash in your pocket. Welcome to the Tax Talk podcast and an exciting episode with Joe Whitbread. Joe is the agency owner of JSM, Joe Social Media, the first social media agency in Alberta. In addition to being a small business owner, Joe likes to lend his talents within the public speaking and MC roles, most notably with the Calgary Flames, and he also does some voiceover work. Joe, thank you very much for hopping on the podcast with me today.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. So today we are touching on finding hidden business opportunities. So maybe a little outside of what I normally do, kind of dealing with the data. We're looking into the marketing aspect of things and how you can, find some ways to earn some extra cash these days, because we all know inflation's up and cash flow is down. So if you can generate a little extra to put in your back pocket, you're going to be better suited for that. So what is holding you back from growing your business? What are some things that maybe small business owners or individuals that are maybe just getting into a side hustle are maybe bumping up against the wall on? What are some things that you kind of see that you can help them move into that next level?
Yeah, I appreciate the question. The very first thing that we notice is a lack of confidence, to be quite honest. It's probably not the answer you were anticipating or expecting, but I think it's very fair to say that entrepreneurs operate in a very risky endeavor when they step out of a corporate world or a job they were hired to do, find their legs. Typically, age has something to do with this, not always, but certainly confidence comes with opportunities that were successful or the learned results from failure. And the overall or 10,000 foot approach that I've always found holds people from stepping out is confidence. That is not to say also opportunity doesn't lend itself when you've got perhaps 5, 6, 7 kids or mouths to feed. That is not confidence. That's just someone who might be blockaded by life circumstances. But confidence does play a role. And more I'm asked, what's working or not working with this idea or this venture I might want to go into. And there's nothing wrong with it. Right. What's wrong with it is you don't have the guts to try it. And that comes, by the way, there's nothing wrong with, having some level of apprehension. Sure. But we are afraid to fail. Right. And that's it. Confidence is everything. We are afraid to fail. And the bad news is, and I'm sorry I'm on your podcast to say this, but you probably will. Right. You probably will. And just look at the stats. So confidence would be my answer on that.
For sure. And I would completely agree. I know I preach this to my son all the time. If you have confidence in life, you can honestly do whatever you want. It doesn't matter what it is. If you're willing to put yourself out there, accept some failure, because that is ultimately going to happen, you are going to succeed at some point in time. The first thing you jump into might not be the thing you eventually land in, but you've got to take some stepping stones to get from wherever it is you are now to where it is that you're ultimately ending up wanting to be at down the road.
Well, and I think we see that, quite frankly, in the way we're all raised in general in a North American culture. I mean, sports is something that I always think are pushed ahead or as an agenda, and not in a negative way. I certainly grew up in the sports culture. Schools, regardless of the school you're in, have a sports culture within them. And we all know there's a hierarchy for those, the proverbial high school quarterback or captain of the volleyball team. Yep. And certainly outside the school, sport sports play an incredible role, in my opinion, in societal behaviors, in our growth, in our confidence, whether individual or team sports. But to your point, when we fail at our sports, and you inevitably will fail in sport, by the way.
100%.
There is yet to be a perfect team or a perfect athlete who has never experienced failure, and I would argue, ironically, that's because they're not perfect. What you're describing in business or any aspiration you have has to come, we know this, with some level of failure, because without those learned mistakes. So there's not a lot of people I don't know at my age, born in the 1900s, as I like to say, who hasn't failed at sports or thought they might make it to a big league someday and realized they pivoted and realized what they were good at wasn't in the sports realm, but that taught lessons to them of how they could pursue that interest. So I would argue that the side hustles, as you say, and many of us have them, whether it's crafts at your local church or at the farmer's market, or perhaps an invention that you made in your basement. You're good at something. Aside from what you're paid to do, it's the confidence that you learn from the resilient failures that will teach you to be more confident. You're absolutely right in your lessons to your son, in my opinion.
Oh, appreciate that. So how does a good social media presence drive your exponential opportunity? If you're starting out with that side hustle, what can that social media presence do for you in that respect?
Yeah, great question. Get asked it all the time. The first thing I really want to say on this question, and I get asked that a lot as well, is understand that social media is where we are now. It's 2025. The more things change, though, the more they stay the same. Social media, of course, and AI and algorithms and fancy digital devices and apps that we're able to download and do an incredible amount of creative things with are simply an evolution of what has always been true. And what has always been true is the success comes from the idea. But to your point on social networking, that is just a buzzword for what you've always needed. The cafe in a local small community in Alberta or any place across Canada was the social network. And the Chamber of Commerce in many cities across our nation, 120, 130 years old. The Chamber of Commerce was LinkedIn. So the more things change, the more they stay the same. And this is a fundamental, the reason I answer it this way is because for some reason people think these new apps, devices, or social media channels are somehow this new invention. The app is a new invention.
Right.
But the Chamber of Commerce was about making handshakes, business relationships, and networking. So the basis or the impetus of your question is, how does my social media presence or how does my favoritism online and the build of my brand favor the thing that I'm doing or the business? Great question, and it does. There is an exponential opportunity now to meet the people within the industry of those you want to engage with, encourage, and ultimately consume or buy your products and services. But that always existed. Right. You had to pound the pavement, so to speak. Every vacuum cleaner salesman, right. All the proverbial old school door knocks of Bibles or encyclopedias at the door. This was networking. Door knocking still exists in elections today, and I always love to look at elections as a extension, politics. This is not a political conversation, but politics are an extension of marketing. The best candidate is the one who best markets to the people. And that is literally what we are trying to do as business owners. So if you're looking to get exponential networking opportunities, you can't just put all your eggs in one basket. You can't just be a TikToker or a YouTuber, or a Twitch streamer, or on X or Facebook or Instagram. What you have to do is be able to shake hands or make actual relationships. You and I have plenty of valuable networking associates that I don't know and you don't know. But here we are in a room shaking hands, speaking to people who also know me, or at least know me online, but don't realize I could help them. Right. That's not a sales technique. You don't have to pay me to help you, but I know someone you need to get an audience. So that's the exponential networking that these channels have allowed us opportunity in that we never had before, because you couldn't be heard outside the coffee cafe in your local community.
Right. And I'd completely agree with you on that point. I mean, I'm involved in a bi-weekly networking group, and I don't need, again, to go in there and pitch myself or pitch my business or anything like that. All I'm looking for is the opportunity to go and meet people. Some weeks it works into some business, some weeks it doesn't, but you're just wanting to get out there and shake hands and meet people. And someone might not need your services that day, but at least you've grown that relationship and you can potentially be of use to them down the road. And to me, that's all it is in business. you get to that point where you can generate those kind of internal leads. You've got some clients that, respect you and want to work with you. They will do that networking piece for you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, and that's exactly the goal of marketing. When we wanted to network beyond our audience, we would purchase 30-second ads on a radio or a television. We'd buy a half-page or a quarter-page ad in the section of the newspaper that best represented. That's the other part of the science of advertising, which, frankly, so many people have never studied. They advertise, they understand the content. They're doing it the backwards way. This was funny on TikTok, I'm going to do that funny here. While I understand that content is what drives people's attention and the engagement, if you don't understand or study the science behind that, then you can't understand that a rural driven product endorsement or service should probably go into a audience of rural people. And that's the impetus of buying, on radio, it would be country radio versus rock radio. It's not about the music favorite, it's about the audience that might penetrate. If you want a business crowd, you're going to advertise in Wall Street or in a city center where visual elements of people getting off a train can see you and your brand all the time. It might not be most served to be in a local rural jurisdiction. So these are the elements of the science behind marketing. Social media is just a new medium to put that on. And so people get caught up sometimes in this magnificent new way exponentially. I love that you use that because you're right. But if you're not a good scientific or psychological marketer, then you're not understanding what Coke, Pepsi, Nike, and Adidas are actually doing to get your attention.
Right. No, that makes sense. So of these three factors, brand awareness, customer engagement, and customer retention, which do you think are the most important of those three?
Yeah, great question. Love that. Well, retention is always the most important if you're in sales for a period of time. So I like to think of retention as a secondary aspect. Obviously, anyone new or side hustle businesses just starting out looking for that confidence, you don't have anyone, so you can't retain anyone. Sure. So immediately of those three, I'd throw that out. I would think engagement now is the biggest one, only because these algorithms, these channels, these digital apps require it. Right. I always say that you used to have to impress consumers and customers, whether you're selling insurance, tax services, realtors, a service-based industry, you had to impress consumers. Now you actually have to concentrate on impressing the channels. Right. That's an unfortunate reality, and frankly, it's frustrating. There's not many entrepreneurs, other than those of us in marketing, who got into their business to be the marketer. Right. It's a secondary aspect. Everyone has to be a marketer now. If you sell cleaning services, you're also the marketer of cleaning services, and you don't have schooling in that and learning in that. So it's an unfortunate reality unless you hire someone in that profession of marketing, but that can be costly. Mm-hmm. And so engagement is what has to happen. It goes back to what we were talking about. Most people go for engagement only, so they will look for the funniest or most entertaining or most performative level of content, forgetting that no one sees your content if you have no following, or if you don't have a following strategy, or if you don't have a reply strategy, or if you don't have a brand strategy in general for all factors or mediums that you might advertise on. If you don't have a brand strategy or a social media policy for the people who work for you, then you can do 1,000 amazing things right and have it ruined overnight by somebody on your team or in commission role who ruins that with a social media post yelling at referees during a hockey game, and much worse, as we know. So I would say engagement is the biggest, and that goes internal, Jared, as well as external. Engagement in marketing has never been more important internally, right down to the family table. A conversation with kids or family members about the value that our family wants to portray. Our personal brand in this family is this thing, and this thing. Right. Therefore, when kids, you guys are online on your Snapchats, and this is very difficult, but it's really, really important because we operate our own corporations now. Our families can have damage when our kids may do something online or otherwise, and that damages dad's or mom's job because we had a bad name. That isn't lost on me, and part of what I speak around schools and do. So we really do have to approach our businesses the same way. The boardroom has to buy in to what the social media approach of our business is. We do this, we do a podcast once a week or once a month. We also post to Facebook, just so you know, we tag our associates in that. You may be tagged in that. That means if I follow through, or more importantly, if my customers follow through on that tag and they find that you're yelling at some political figure or hating on someone in our public that you disagree with, you damage our business brand. And if you'd like to work here, so that's the social media policy component. It can get really sticky, and certainly people smarter than me have to write them on a deep legal level. Right. But it's something we really, really do have to consider. So I would say engagement is the biggest, and it relies on all the things I just talked about.
Gotcha. So I think to your earlier point, it just builds upon the overall relationships. Those used to be a little bit more, I guess, in person. Now we have the ability to take that to an exponentially larger place. So you need to then be aware of all it is that you, your business, your staff, and to your point, your family members are doing, both in their relationships externally and then online, to ensure that, you're preserving that business legacy and you're protecting the name that you've probably spent a lot of time putting into once you get that side hustle up and moving. So
yeah, you're absolutely right. And that exponential value, which is a word that we continue to bring up, but it's so true. I mean, we know what virality is. We know not necessarily how to go viral. That study is lightning in a bottle in many cases, but we do know that virality is a thing. And you're right, you can do all of this work as mentioned, and you can put it into your family name or your business with a family name, and all of a sudden it takes one damaging client review or customer review or potentially internal issue or struggle that's recognized elsewhere. And so the exponential component is extremely important.
Gotcha. So once someone kind of gets moving into a business opportunity that they're thinking could be beneficial, they've bridged that confidence gap, they maybe reach out to you, are there specific marketing tools that you're going to potentially suggest to someone? Should they be checking their social media insights? Should they be looking at ad campaigns, partnering with influencers, putting together contests? Or is it going to kind of rely on what I typically tell my clients? It all depends.
Certainly, and you're bang on. Absolutely, all of those things are wonderful, depending on what you do. I mean, would I say to a farmer's market? By the way, all businesses should be recognized for the entrepreneurial courage. Regardless, you can sell candlesticks at the farmer's market. It'll cost you $30 to have a booth, depending on the city or community you're in. You'll spend all week preparing for it. You've obviously got to make your product. You've got to deliver your product, package your product, price your product. You'll have to have systems and other things. So, but that's courage, and that's that confidence, because you'll have a customer base. Would I recommend to them they should hire an influencer on Instagram? Of course, I wouldn't necessarily, depending on what's possible. So sure. I know the answer of it depends is a frustrating one for many people looking for that. You're right. No different than your industry, seeking the advice of professionals, whether that's in money management, when you're looking for home sales or looking to sell your home, before you pay any fees at all, you should have an expert's opinion. Marketing is the same, but this one is frustrating in our industry. I'm sure you have versions of the frustrating do-it-yourselfer. Social media, like none other, I would argue, is the number one industry on the planet to this day that has do-it-yourselfers. There's not many people making a rocket ship that will fly to Mars in their garage. There may be one or two, but that do-it-yourself project would require money, certainly, but a lot of expertise to get it done right and survive the ordeal. Social media is something that was presented to the planet societally 15, 20 years ago, depending on which channel you're on, even as little as 5 years ago for some channels. And it was presented as a do-it-yourself channel. And then it got away on society. It did. I will tell you that. And one of the reasons it got away is the impetus of your question. Right. That's because non-experts in the psychology field, let alone marketing, psychology, non-experts in societal understanding, in what makes people tick, so to speak, and the psychology behind why you're being sold an ice-cold, refreshing pop with a spritz of water around it, but when you go to the pop machine, it never comes out with droplets of water around it. We are made to think that Coca-Cola comes in a glass bottle, drank by a sexy male or female. That is the way it is sold to us. Yet, other than souvenir shops and antique shops, that bottle doesn't exist anymore. It is not a purchased bottle. You can get it as a collector's item, of course. So that's the impetus of psychological selling. And that's just Coca-Cola. And you aren't Coca-Cola. You're not watching this with questions that you may have for Jared or me. You're not Coca-Cola. But you have to think like Coca-Cola, or you have to think like major brands that are telling you that their product is the best one in your algorithm, or the best one on your Amazon, or the best one in your local store. Once you understand that your favorite liquor store, their items at the front of the store and at the middle of the store potentially have psychological expirations, and the reason you're being told to buy something at the counter is because they need to move that product because it's old, and other elements. These are the psychological aspects. So way streaming away from exactly what you're asking, but the point is it does depend what you're selling, who you're selling to, the method in which you choose to sell. There is nothing wrong with traditional advertising. In fact, as we have learned, there are channels that are going up and down all the time. And they are billionaire or millionaire platforms that are attempting to get your screen time. There are competitors all the time. Do not put your eggs in one basket. If you think you like Instagram, that is wonderful. If you hate LinkedIn because you think it's too much work, that's okay too, except if Instagram goes down and you have no LinkedIn presence or an audience built there, which is a business platform to talk about business, then you haven't invested in the right channels. So it's not about what you like, it's about where people are and where your people are to get the best results.
Right. So I think twofold, one of which, like you said, right off the top, we need to be advertising in the space that is most applicable for our business or side hustle. And then number two, while it is a very do-it-yourself type of platform and field just in general, probably talking to someone that has maybe a bit of expertise in the field is maybe going to see you get a result on your efforts beyond what it is that you are going to be able to do yourself. Yes, you generate some followers in Instagram, but you are nowhere else. So if that falls off online for you, you're basically non-existent. So
exactly. And I can think of, to take it away from social media, I can think of do-it-yourself home improvement stores. I won't name them because they don't pay me to say it. There's home improvement stores that'll do a birdhouse or a how to tile your fireplace. They will earn your trust by teaching you how to do it because they want you to buy everything you need to tile your fireplace or build a birdhouse with your kids from their store. So that is a relationship selling. And that's the psychology I'm talking about, that experts in marketing, not just social media, understand. When you're given, I always told my kids when they were growing up, there's nothing for free. When you hear about a free giveaway, and you mentioned contesting, nothing is free. Nothing is free except to kids. Everything is free to kids. So one of my first free pieces of advice for you is don't necessarily, depending on what you're selling, market to kids. Everything's free to kids. Market to the people purchasing what you sell for kids. I digress. The point is, what's seemingly free is not free. Someone has to pay for it. Your marketing has to pay for it. And so you have to deviate from that. Everyone gets something for free and use it as a loss leader or an ability to gain trust or compassion or whatever your goal is, your key performance indicators within your marketing.
Oh, good points. Do you have an idea of how many people are operating a side hustle in Canada in 2024?
I don't have a stat on that. I would argue, this is a complete guess, but I would argue out of every, again, delineating between the classes, those who have and those who have not. So certainly not every adult, but those in the middle class or those who work for a living, so to speak, with a career-based job, I would argue 50% have a side hustle. That doesn't mean they're marketing their side hustle.
Right.
And I'm sure your viewers and your listeners can immediately Google it and find out a stat, but I would argue that stat is, I just think of the families I know. I think of the adult friends I know, whether they have kids or not. If you own a home or are part of that middle class where you have, and that's a big broad stroke, I understand. I would argue we all have a side hustle. And if your side hustle, by the way, is, you make quilts, or you enjoy podcasts like this where you learn something and go, I can teach stuff too. And so I tinker in the garage with my carpentry skills. That's a side hustle. To be clear, that's not entrepreneurial until you attempt to sell it.
I would agree.
But all I'm saying is that's a side hustle. Hobbies are side hustles. So if you paint by number on your spare time to help your mental health or any other reason, that is a side hustle. Can it be entrepreneurial? Sure. That's how I got started in this business, but also my announcing and voiceover. I did it because I loved it. I was good at it. I was recognized for it. I was validated for that recognition, and I made it a side hustle that was entrepreneurial, and now it's a successful business. So that's all I'm saying with the 50%, but that'd be my guess.
No, and I think that makes sense. And I think as maybe you get up in years, maybe you do have a bit of additional time to maybe tap into some of those passions. And I think a lot of people can find value not only putting their time into those things, but I think as we, get further along and you get these tools that are available to you, you have the opportunity to then monetize that side hustle now more so than it's ever been. Like, I know we purchased, I don't even think we bought them. I think we just got some planted pots from someone off of Facebook Marketplace last summer. And the lady's husband did some mechanical work in the garage over the course of the winter. He puts it on YouTube, and he has done well enough to monetize that. And they earn enough off of that platform to save up and go to Mexico once a year.
Amazing, right?
Yeah.
And that's how easy this is. And that's an inspiring story for your listeners and your viewers. And we hear those all the time. Understand that there's so many people trying this and failing, and that's okay. I always tell the story of Connor McDavid. I mean, if you're not a hockey fan, he's the greatest player to probably ever lace up. Don't at me. I'm sure there will be people that disagree. You can have your Guy Lafleurs and Wayne Gretzky's. I did too from my generation. But because of technology and because of equipment, there's a Connor McDavid, and he's incredible at what he does. Take a Tiger Woods or anyone else who's great at a sport or whatever they do. My point is there are so many people trying, unfortunately, in a society where if you're not all, then you're nothing. Right. And my encouragement through Jared's story, but also in my understanding of the platforms, is you don't need 3 million YouTube subscribers. You don't need 5,000 or more Instagram followers. That's what you've been taught you need. You need a piece or a segment of your side hustle's consumers, a piece. Right. If you love painting Adirondack chairs, or what this gentleman was doing for his YouTube channel in the shop, that can be, you're absolutely right. We now have the ability to broadcast that. And what's also really cool, Jared, and I always like to bring this up, is your production crew, your executive producers can be your kids. This is where we can involve ourselves as parents. Teenagers or preteens love pretending they're YouTubers or producers. So what a great way to monetize something you're good at, fixing washing machines, but having your son or your daughter be your shooter, which is what we call camera people, being your writer, being the person who introduces or creates the music intro. All of these elements can now be a family function of the business. And I really think there's huge opportunity in that. Never mind the fact that we're teaching good habits on the internet, which is not going anywhere, for our kids.
Right. And I would agree. I mean, I know my son has delved into that too, just going on to Fortnite, taking a video of him playing Fortnite, and he'll splice the videos together and put them on there. And he's figured out how to create, YouTube thumbnails and do all the edits in Canva and stuff. And I mean, I think he started doing this when he was, 7 years old.
Yeah.
And he probably has more skills in this department than myself or most people my age. So yeah, I would agree. You're teaching them some good habits on how to present themselves on these platforms. And I would agree, none of this stuff is going anywhere. So you might as well learn early and be accustomed to how these things are going to change your life going forward. Because if you understand how technology works, I think you're going to be highly employable. And if you maybe get a sense of that business kind of skill set early on, maybe you're going to have some aspirations to take on a side hustle and translate it into something that you can monetize down the road. And what better way to instill some confidence in your child than to kind of help them along in the early years by doing some of that stuff.
Hear, hear. Thank you for saying it that, and thanks for saying it that way. Parents have been also taught that social media bad, device bad, and hey, I'm not here to defend what's bad online. The internet is an awful place. So are some cities that we travel to, but there are areas that are safer than others. I love that you said it that way. As you know, I speak in schools all over our province. I've been asked to, for the last 10 years, bring some understanding, some semblance for adults who didn't grow up with an internet or a device, but their kids are on it. And so you've explained it perfectly. Remember, your son or daughter is going to do what they see. By the way, I'll remind you humbly, you did too. That might have been as simple or as innocent as pretending you were your favorite singer singing into a hairbrush in the mirror, or if your family had enough money, they bought a handy cam and you pretended you were a video star from some video channel. Or on the outdoor rink, you may have pretended you were your favorite player, or at the basketball court. These are things children will emulate. What they are emulating right now is very frustrating for parents because we think it's stupid, we think it's stupid to watch someone play video games online. And I do too. And that's no disrespect to anyone who plays video games, streams video games, or, like so many of your kids, watches people stream video games. It is, in my opinion, stupid, but it's not stupid to a 10-year-old. And Jared, your point on your son is a really good one. Replace that passion right now, just like I had a passion for going on the outdoor rink every day I possibly could. Well, I'm an adult now and I have a mortgage to pay and I have a business to do. So my passion there, I wish I could go to the outdoor rink every day. I wish they were paying me millions to play hockey. They're not. But what I did is I learned there's a business inside the game. I still work, as you mentioned in the opening, for the National Hockey League. I get an NHL paycheck. It's not the one I want, but that stems from supportive parents, which is sort of the point of this too. Being supportive. I was supported in pretending that I was going to be some media somebody, or social media didn't exist in the 1900s when I was born either. So I grew up a kid riding my bike and drinking from the hose and all of the tropes that we learn. Mm-hmm. But I was supported in performance. I was supported in sport, which is a performance, by the way. I was supported to do those things, just like we have to support our sons and daughters where it's part of your family morals. Mm-hmm. We have to support our kids who are streaming themselves playing video games to 7 followers online. Have a conversation with them about replacing that later on, because once they do become young adults, and we all do, and once we become older adults, you'll start to realize that they'll replace that video game playing with, oh, you know what, I'm a really good welder or crafts person, and I'm making something in the shop or the garage. I'm not going to stream me playing video games, but I have all of the skills, to your point, mm-hmm. And not just the skills in the production, but like you said, the thumbnails, all the psychology of why people click and why they watch and what gets in an algorithm. They'll have that. I'm meeting kids now in my presentations around the province who are 14 years old who have that. Right. Their product isn't watched because there's a lot of people streaming video games. Sure. But they have, when they turn 23 years old and they get their first job in tax advisory or tax management, and they have what we're doing right now, they will take all those skills and all of a sudden they'll be miles ahead of their fellow side hustle because they'll have the skills on whatever iteration of YouTube we're watching in 2030, right? So a wonderful story, well told, and I really appreciate that because that perspective is where we need to approach. The discouragement of screen time and social media is very important and something I can speak long and hard about, but not here. But the doing it appropriately and doing it with what we're good at is where it's at, and I love that you're doing that.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not perfect by any means, but I like to
none of us
kind of encourage him in his interest as best as possible, and I would agree I don't see the interest in watching someone else play video games online, but whether it's that or something else, I'm never going to fully understand what he's interested in. But I think if I encourage him and if all parents do the same thing, I think you're probably going to see the best results out of your kids in the long term. So
I totally agree. Well done. And foster that. Foster not the video games part, although, hey, there's lots of gaming jobs now, especially in Canada, by the way. EA Sports, which many know, has moved to Canada, and it's a huge, this is $1 billion industry. So there's lots to talk about on that, but I agree with you. It's fostering the passion and supportiveness, not what they're doing, because that will change.
Agreed. So real quick in closing, if someone was to start up a side hustle, what do you think is maybe the most important aspect of their social media presence? Engaging with their community, creating a consistent voice, posting regularly. or just keeping up with the trends?
Yeah, all great things. So there's definitely a hierarchy potentially there, but there's a lot of ties too. I think your presence and your brand is most important. And by the way, that's not the brand you're about to make. That's not a lot of people put their dog's name in their logo and that's your new brand. And that's not what I'm talking about. Who you are will always matter as an entrepreneur. Right. You know that because you have to represent clients and you are you outside of what you do, as am I. I happen to have my name in my business. I happen to be a public figure that people know. But I have to carry that reputation. So your likes, your shares, your engagement online, you might think it has to do with what you sell or your side hustle in this case, or your entrepreneurial vision. It always has to do with you. And in many cases, it has to do with the people you surround yourself with as well. We are now, through social media connections, networked, positive or negative, to who we are surrounded by. And we have a choice in that. So yes, you do have to pay for sometimes the reputation of someone else that you have vouched for. And in many cases, you can also ride coattails of reputations. This has happened for years. That's why politicians will have endorsements from people that are famous because they know they can gain that audience. That's the psychology of campaigning, which, by the way, in marketing, you don't have to be a political junkie or fan. Marketing in politics is a brilliant way. They do carve out the laws, but they are doing it very, very strategically. And it's just like the cereal aisle of a grocery store. It's one of the best places to learn marketing. Because if you think those cartoon characters on sugar cereals aren't talking to kids, you're wrong. They are. And that white milk that you think is in the cereal bowl is glue, because product photography isn't what you think it is either. So these are all the things you should learn on your list. I think it's really important, especially in a do-it-yourself social media marketing world, that we realize just because you have an Instagram account does not make you a communications, public relations, brand, or marketing manager. With all due respect to everyone who thinks they are, there are some awful choices in strategy on social. So get some learning, get some advice, get some training. Don't just put your brand out there the way you think it should be out there, because we have to give more credit to the professional communicators as we get into AI and digital apps that do it for you. They're not good enough. People are.
Sure. Yeah, and I think what I've learned in my, albeit brief, professional career is just building that personal brand. You might switch from job to job, even from industry to industry. That's just kind of the way things go these days. There's a lot more flexibility for moving careers and, completely pivoting. But if you build a strong brand for yourself, one born out of, trust and, doing the right thing, putting yourself out there and being honest all the time.
Authentic. I use authentic.
Yeah.
Honesty should be standard, but I call it authentic because you're absolutely right. Good on you. Authenticity does matter, especially in a fake world where we go to AI and news that we can't trust and other things. So I agree with you. Authenticity is the word I use because you always should be honest, but that doesn't mean, honesty does not mean going out there and telling someone what happened. Right. Sometimes you do need to hide something that happened. And I don't mean hide in a nefarious way. I mean, it's not beneficial to your brand to say this happened. Right. If you get I'll use something innocent. If I get a speeding ticket, something very innocent, it happens to some of us, and you might get a speeding ticket. And yes, you're guilty for speeding. That might not be something that I choose to communicate to my brand. It happened, but it doesn't mean you get to know about that because it doesn't match. I'm not a lawbreaker in my brand, but I did break the law. But that's a truth that I'm going to keep away. So it doesn't have to be nefarious. Own your mistakes, be authentic, own your mental health as well, especially if you have other kids watching and young people. But yeah, I agree with that. I call it authenticity over honesty because you should be honest, but you don't have to share all your honesty. You can share your authenticity though.
Right. Nope, that's a good point. Joe, I just want to say thanks again for taking some time out of your busy schedule to hop on the podcast. If anyone wants to touch base with you to either get that side hustle going or to take their business to the next level, what is the best way that they can get a hold of you?
Well, I know it'll surprise you, but I am on social media. So you can find my personal brand at Joe Whitbread, Whitbread. There's no E after the E. Everyone spells it Whitebread, but yeah, I'm at Joe Whitbread everywhere. You can certainly find me there. And my business is JSM, which stands for Joe Social Media. And there's a .com for that as well. Very easily found, and I answer everything. Be kind online, not just in in person, online as well, really matters. But I do answer everything, Jared. So thanks for the opportunity to join you. Really insightful, and I love what you're doing here. Thank you.
Perfect. No, I appreciate that. Thanks again for taking some time, Joe. Once again, Jared Pilon here for the Tax Talk podcast. Thanks again for tuning in. Take care, and we will talk again soon.